Welcome back. We begin with Riyadh, where Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has met his Saudi counterpart to discuss the security situation in the Middle East. During his meeting with Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, Qureshi stressed the need to solve the crisis through diplomatic means. The foreign minister warned that tensions in the region could affect the Afghan peace process, which has entered its final stage. The Saudi foreign minister appreciated Pakistan's efforts for regional peace. Yesterday, Qureshi visited Tehran, where he met Iran's President Hassan Rouhani as part of Pakistan's efforts for peace in the Middle East. His visit comes amid ongoing US-Iran tensions following the killing of Iran's top military commander Qasem Soleimani earlier this month and the subsequent Iranian strikes against US military bases in Iraq. More on this, Minister of State of Germany's Foreign Office Niels Annan has lauded Pakistan's role for regional peace and stability. He called on Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa in Rawalpindi. In a statement, the Pakistan military's media wing said issues of mutual interest and regional security were discussed at the meeting. They also explored ways to enhance bilateral cooperation in various fields. In another development, Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has warned that any military confrontation with Iran will impact global peace. Abe is on a 5-day visit to the Middle East, hoping to ease tensions spiked by Washington's killing of Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani. After meeting with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Abe called on all parties to engage in diplomatic efforts to diffuse tensions. Japan's Foreign Ministry spokesman Masato Otaka said both leaders also agreed to work closely on maritime security in the region. But he said Japan will not join a US-led coalition in the region. The Prime Minister's tour will also include visits to the United Arab Emirates and Oman. French President Emmanuel Macron says France and Russia want to safeguard Iran's nuclear deal. The statement comes after Macron spoke to Russia's President Vladimir Putin on phone. Macron said both states are ready to engage with Iran to preserve the region's stability. Earlier, Britain, France, and Germany called on Iran to stick to the 2015 nuclear pact. In a joint statement, the EU leaders stressed on Iran to refrain from further violence. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Gang Shuang said US sanctions on Iran can't solve the Middle East's problems. Speaking to reporters in Beijing, he stressed the need for dialogue to ensure stability and peace in the Middle East. Gang urged the US to stop imposing sanctions against Chinese companies. President Donald Trump put further sanctions on Tehran after it attacked US troops in Iraq. The new curbs also involve a Chinese trading firm and a shipping vessel. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he will seek justice for the victims of the Ukrainian airplane disaster. Trudeau spoke in Edmonton, Alberta, at a vigil for the 57 Canadians killed in the disaster. The mourners placed black-rimmed photos of the dead on the stage beside rose petals, candles, and plates of dates. Trudeau consoled the grievers, saying he will not rest until there are answers.
We will continue to work with our partners to ensure that a full, transparent investigation is conducted. I want to assure all families and all Canadians we will not rest until there are answers. We will not rest until there is justice and accountability.
In Tehran, authorities have ordered police to show restraint at demonstrations that broke out after the accidental shooting down of a Ukrainian jet. In a statement, the Capitol Police Chief said the demonstrators were treated with patience and tolerance. The Ukraine International Airlines plane bound for Kiev was shot down shortly after taking off from Tehran on Wednesday. All 176 people on board were killed. Officials in Iran initially denied Western claims that the Boeing 737 was downed by a missile, but acknowledged it afterwards. Iran has invited experts from Canada, France, and Ukraine and the United States to take part in the investigation into the air disaster. In Afghanistan, at least 7 Taliban commanders broke out of a prison in southeastern Paktia province. Officials said the prisoners escaped through the mosque inside the facility in Gardez city. In a tweet, Taliban spokesman Zabiullah Mujahid said 7 fighters managed to reach a secure place. Violence in the country usually recedes as winter sets in. But this year, the Taliban have pushed forward with their operations despite talks with the US for a deal that would see American troops leave the country. In Moscow, Libya's Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj met Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu ahead of peace talks with warlord Khalifa Haftar. Libya's UN-recognized government and the Haftar-led Eastern forces are expected to sign the truce today. Yesterday, the two sides agreed to a ceasefire brokered by Russia and Turkey. If signed, the pact would end 9 months of fighting in the North African country. Libya's head of High Council of State said the pact will revive the country's political process. Earlier, in a televised speech, Sarraj called on Libyans to forget the past, reject discord, and close ranks to move towards stability and peace. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen welcomes a ceasefire in Libya initiated by Turkey and Russia. Speaking in Luxembourg, he cautioned that the United Nations must lead the peace process in the war-torn country. Libya has been mired in turmoil since the toppling of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011.
No, a ceasefire, yes, it is a first step in the right direction. But what you need is a building process for reconciliation, for reconstruction, and for a government of unity in Libya. This is a long way to go, and this has to be a UN-led process. This is of utmost importance.
Al-Qaeda-backed Al-Shabaab militants have killed 3 teachers in an attack on Kamuthe Primary School in eastern Kenya. Police said the militants from neighboring Somalia targeted the settlement in Garissa County and torched a security post. Officials said a child was also wounded by a stray bullet. Al-Shabaab has targeted Kenya frequently after it sent troops into Somalia in 2011 to fight the militant group. Last week, 4 school children were killed in a gunfight between Al-Shabaab and local police in Garissa. Moving on, the US has reached out to North Korea to resume diplomatic negotiations in Stockholm after the two countries broke off talks in October. White House National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien said the US has used multiple channels to communicate with North Korea. He said Washington wants to implement Chairman Kim's commitment to denuclearize the Korean peninsula. O'Brien said it was a positive sign that the North Korean leader did not deliver on his warning of a Christmas gift. Last week, Pyongyang said it will not discuss proposals like those made by Trump at the Hanoi summit in February 2019. The longest mass transport strike in modern French history has entered its 40th day. This comes despite the French government's offer of major concessions to unions. The hardline CGT union, which wants the reforms dropped altogether, rejected the offer and called on workers to continue protesting. Demonstrators in Paris, masked and hooded, broke shop windows, set fires, and threw projectiles at police in riot gear. Last week, Prime Minister Edouard Philippe offered to withdraw the most contentious measure of the pension reform plans. Philippe aims to present the reform bill on January 24th so that it can be discussed in Parliament starting in mid-February. We have a lot more coming up right after this short break, so stay tuned. Welcome back. In Pakistan, 14 people have been killed as heavy rain and snow wreaked havoc in the country's southwestern Balochistan province. The meteorological department said heavy snowfall in the province's capital, Quetta, has broken a 20-year record. Officials said 6 people, including 3 women and 3 children, died in Zob district after their roof collapsed. They said heavy snowfall has also claimed lives in the border town of Chaman, Barshor, and the Pishin district's Bostan area. Authorities said hundreds of passengers are stranded on different highways linking Balochistan. More from Pakistan. The Lahore High Court declared the special court formed for former President Pervez Musharraf's trial unconstitutional. In December, the court handed General Musharraf a death sentence for violating the country's constitution in 2007. The High Court said the case against the former president was not prepared in accordance with the law. In his petition, General Musharraf had called for setting aside the special court's verdict for being illegal and without jurisdiction. Pakistan's foreign ministry summoned Indian envoy Gaurav Ahluwalia to protest the ceasefire violation along the line of control on the 11th of January. A 24-year-old man was killed in unprovoked Indian firing in Quetta sector of the line of control. The Director General South Asia and the SAARC desk at the Foreign Ministry, Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry, said ceasefire violations by India is a threat to peace in the region. He said India cannot divert world's attention from human rights violation in occupied Kashmir. He called on India to respect the ceasefire. In New Delhi, 7 Afghan nationals have been arrested in connection with smuggling narcotics. Authorities say they busted an international drug syndicate which was being operated from Afghanistan. They say over 1 kilogram of high-quality heroin was also seized during the operation. The arrested Afghan nationals were trying to enter India with the heroin hidden on their persons. Officials say a detailed probe has been launched to identify other people linked to the network. In India, the all-women sit-in against the controversial citizenship law in the capital, New Delhi, has completed 1 month. Demonstrators have refused to leave Shaheen Bagh until government withdraws the new act. Indian Congress leader Shashi Tharoor addressed the sit-in, saying the women's resistance is legendary. Meanwhile, BJP leader Dilip Ghosh said protesters should be shot directly for damaging public property. In another incident, Indian police arrested 80 protesters for waving black flags at Home Minister Amit Shah in Madhya Pradesh. 27 people have been killed in countrywide protests against the Citizenship Act, considered discriminatory to Muslim minorities. The Philippines is on a high alert after Luzon Island's volcano started spewing ash and lava. Officials said the region faced a series of earthquakes and streets surrounding the volcano were coated in fine grit. They said at least 10,000 people sought refuge in evacuation centers. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology raised the alert level from 3 to 4 out of a maximum of 5. Situated in the middle of a lake, Tal is one of the world's smallest volcanoes, but Philippines' second most active. Authorities warned there was a risk an eruption could cause a tsunami in the lake. In Australia, rescue services say firefighters have finally brought the country's largest mega blaze under control. Rain in the last couple of days delivered much-needed respite for the countryside ravaged by bushfires. New South Wales Rural Fire Service Commissioner Shane Fitzsimmons said dozens of other fires are yet to be brought under control. Authorities have asked citizens to remain vigilant as work to clear roadblocks and fallen trees is underway in Victoria State. The Australian government has also committed $50 million to an emergency wildlife recovery program. The raging bushfires have killed 28 people and over 800 million animals, destroying 2,000 homes. In Mexico, a red tide algae bloom on the southern Pacific coast has killed hundreds of green sea turtles. According to the officials, 292 turtles have been killed, while a few have also been rescued. Watch this report on how conservationists are trying to save these rare turtles.
Sick turtles are temporarily placed on floaties in shallow pools as they recover at the Mexican Turtle Center in Oaxaca. They are removed from the ocean to be nursed back to health before being released into the wild again.
We are treating 11 turtles who are in recovery. One has a life vest as it can't breathe very well, and it needs support so it doesn't drown. The treatment they're undergoing involves bicarbonates, active carbonates, and histamines.
Autopsies showed that the sick turtles consumed sea salps with high levels of algae toxins brought on from the red tide. The phenomenon is caused by algal blooms that can be so strong to turn the coastal waters red. As a result, oxygen in the water is depleted and the algae releases toxins that can harm wildlife.
Across the Oaxaca coast, there have been reports of 292 dead turtles. Now the toxins from the red tide are coming down. It's estimated that in the coming week, the phenomena will go down, and also the number of turtles that died.
Experts say vast expanses of red algae are caused by several factors, including climate change.
In Germany, the historic island of Helgoland that was once used as a practice bombing site for British airmen after World War II has now turned into a nursery for North Sea seals, attracting a number of tourists and photographers. This report will tell you how.
Around 1,000 of the animals flock to this archipelago in the North Sea for the birthing season between November and January. But it's the newborn seal pups who are the true stars of the show.
They are so close, so alive. I often see them on television, but it's even more exciting here.
For safety, tourists and photographers are asked to stay 30 metres away from the animals, who can weigh up to 300 kilos when they reach adulthood and have been known to bite if they feel threatened. Keeping an eye on both the seals and their observers are volunteers from the Jordsand Association and 2 rangers employed by Heligoland's town hall.
Sometimes tourists forget their limits and get too close. This has negative consequences in the summer because the seals get used to people. They'll want to play in the water and they can injure swimmers.
To keep excited tourists from getting too close, especially during birthing season, wooden boardwalks have been created. For now, the populations are manageable, even if sometimes a cheeky youngster makes its way beyond the barriers. But some fear a rise in water temperatures and levels could lead to greater seal numbers, leaving less space for both seals and enthusiastic tourists.
There are more and more of them, and I think it's because there's lots of food here. But we're at sea level here, and if the water levels increase, we'll probably have new challenges to face.
The Jordsand Association says there have been more than 520 births since November. Once weaned, the baby seals will head to the water of the North Sea, but they will return in spring to change their fur, much to the delight of photographers and wildlife observers.
Studio Lanny, a Nigerian boutique selling furniture and interior designs incorporating traditional designs, is making waves in Africa. The brains behind the project, Lanny Adeoye, says she wants to merge African culture with modern designs, making a niche for herself in the world of art. Lanny Adeoye designs everything from patio furniture to lighting fixtures. She trained as an interior designer in New York, but made her way back to Nigeria to reconnect with her heritage.
I think there's something really interesting about being in this point in time now where we as Africans, there are other African designers like myself who are exploring and trying to sort of create their own narrative that showcases our beautiful, diverse culture in a positive light.
Studio Lanny takes inspiration from a number of traditional African themes. Many of the studio's pieces are inspired by batter drum.
The talking drum for me is such an iconic West African musical instrument. I think what it represents, it really was one of the first telecommunication devices, if you think about it.
Studio Lanny's work with traditional artisans also helps empower communities and improve people's livelihoods. Lanny Adeoye's ultimate goal is to get global recognition for traditional Nigerian designs. The designer is well on her way to achieving this objective and has showcased her work throughout Africa as well as Europe. We have a lot more coming up right after this short break, so stay tuned. In Britain, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he is confident that he will secure a zero tariff and zero quota trade deal with the European Union. Speaking to reporters there, Johnson said there is no need for checks on goods being moved from Britain to Northern Ireland. The region has agreed to maintain alignment with EU market rules under Britain's EU exit deal.
The only circumstances in which you could imagine the need for checks coming from GB to NI, as I've explained before, to Northern Ireland, is if those goods were going on into Ireland and we had not secured, which I hope and I'm confident we will, a zero tariff, zero quota agreement with our friends and partners in the EU.
Saudi Arabia's energy minister said the kingdom's oil production is at over 9 million barrels per day in January and February. Speaking in Tehran, Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman Al Saud said Iraq's compliance with OPEC cuts improved in December and it is looking for full compliance in January. He said kingdom has taken all precautions to ensure the safety of oil facilities after the recent strikes in Iraq. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.